Okay, good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube, just Daf It. Today we're doing Kesubos, Daf Vav 106. We have an amazing share for you today. We're going to be talking about what you can use Trumas Halishka. Machzah Shekel is such a big thing. We talk about it around Purim, Machzah Shekel. Everyone thinks you just use it for the Korbanos, for the Korban Ola, Shachars, and Ben Arbayim. But we're going to find out it's used for a lot of other things. And in Enoch Mencino, we're going to explore why you're allowed to use it for other things besides Karbonos, discuss that and its relationship to what is called the Truma. Called Truma. There's a mitzvah of Truma when you plant a crop, but you have to give a certain portion to a Kohen. We'll discuss the relationship between that and the Machzah Shekel. Let's get into it. Kuvav Ben Aleph on the top. 4 lines from the top. 2 dots. Rav Anan have a Ragil Eliyahu the Asil Gambei. Rav Anan, who we spoke about yesterday, he was a big rabbi, right? He was big enough that when he sent someone into Rav Nachman said there's a mitzvah essay of Kavod Torah, of giving precedence to his litigant in court. Eliyahu used to visit him. The Asil Gambei, they have a master, they say to Eliyahu. If you ever wonder, Tanas be Eliyahu, right? It's written in the back of some Gemaras. Seems like some Bryces and Mishnayos that came from Eliyahu Navi. This is the Gemara discusses where it comes from. It was taught to someone named Rav Anan. Came on David Hachi. Once he used his Kavod Torah, he was a big rabbi. He used his honor in order to get precedence for his Baal Din, right? The Gemara says, essay the Kavod Torah Adif, the Gemara said, right? He used that for his own purpose. The Gemara in Darn discusses you're not supposed to use Kavod Torah for your own purposes. To take honor from the Torah is considered something reprehensible. So, came on David Achi, Salik, Eliyahu and Avi didn't come to him. Yosef B'Tanesa, O boy Racham, he was very upset about this. He fasted, he asked Hashem for mercy. Asa. And Eliyahu returned. Ki Asa have a mavi le'bu'ute. He was afraid of Eliyahu. He thought he would punish him. V'avid tevusa. Yosef Kameh, he would make a desk, or he'd make a bima, and put it in front of him. Ada apik le sidre. Until the end, Eliyahu completed whatever he was teaching him. Behind the Damri, say there the Eliyahu Rabbah, say there the Eliyahu Zuta, right? It's split in time to be Eliyahu was time to be Eliyahu Rabbah, which was the majority of his teachings, which was before this incident, and Eliyahu Zuta which was the teachings that after he came back, and that's why it's called Eliyahu Rabbah and Eliyahu Zuta. Shani Rav Yosef have a rischa. In the years of Rav Yosef, there was anger in the world. Hashem, there was a famine, there was drought. I'm really Rav Yosef. They told Rav Yosef, who's the God of Ador, you should daven for us. I'm really Elisha, the Chavar Rabbanan Mifri Mikamei Havu Paishi Trealfin Masan Rabbanan. Elisha, right? The Talmud of Eliyahu and Navi, right? When he would obviously teach a lot of Torah, when the Rabbanan would leave from him, right, there would be left. Not all the students would leave. There would be at least 2,200 Rabbanan left. They would stay with him all the time. He still didn't feel that he himself was worthy to daven on behalf of Klal Yisrael. On a much lower level, we'll see he had a lot less people, lots less confidants that were next to him. How do you know that so many people stayed with Elisha all the time? They came to Elisha yesterday. We brought this pasuk. They brought him bikurim. They brought him some barley bread. He said, "How should I put it in front of 100 people?" My lifnei mea ish. Right? They brought it says 22 portions for 100 people. What does it mean in front of 100 people? Ilema dechulu lifnei mea ish. He put all 22 portions in front of 100 people. So he divided 22 portions among 100 people. Right? B'shnei betzores, tuvahab. Right? In a year of famine. That's a lot. I mean, even though it's not a portion, it's one portion basically for 5 people, but it's still a lot. A famine, all right, you can split it. He takes the mashed potatoes, he takes the corned beef, but he takes the peas. But must be the chol chad v'chad kami mea ish. Each of the 22 portions, each one was in front of 100 people. So he had to split the roast beef, the corned beef, into 30 parts. And the green beans into 30 parts, and the mashed potatoes into 40 parts. And dessert, they had dessert into 10 parts. Think about an airline meal. I guess it's a portion, I don't know. So therefore, must be there was 2,200 people. 22 portions times 100 is 2,200. When the Rabbanan would leave Rav after his share of Paishe Alpa Umasa and Rabbanan, 1,200 students would always be surrounding Rav. Rav Huna, when they leave Rav Huna's house after a share, Habu Paishe Tzmani Meya Rabbanan, 800 rabbinical scholars would stay there. Rav Huna have a darish which lays our Amorai. He was so big, Rav Huna, that he had 13 spokesmen. I don't know, maybe it was 13 microphones he was speaking into, or 13 people. The President of the United States has, secretary, the press secretary. So he had 13 press secretaries tell him about all his unique Das Torah. When the rabbinical students leave the yeshiva Rav Huna after the shir, they would wipe off their shirts. I guess it was very dirty on the floor. I don't know, they stood on the floor. They had no chairs back then. It was shortage. If they didn't have food, they didn't have chairs, right? And the dust used to cover the sunlight. Ami Marava, they even said in Marava, I guess it was Eretz Yisrael, Kamule Masifta the Rav Huna Bavla, right? The dirt somehow managed to get to Eretz Yisrael, and they would know the time when people left the Shir of Huna. When the Rabbanan left the house of Rabba and Rav Yosef, only 400 students, right? This is Rav Yosef, we said before, who felt he was on a lower level than Elisha. They would call themselves orphans because in previous generations they had more students that would stick around with the Golei Adar. When they left the Abaye, they said, Papa. Some say Rav Papa. Some say it was from the yeshiva Rav Ashi. 200 bodyguards. Imagine a rabbi having 200 bodyguards. This is what they used to have. Elisha had 2,200 bodyguards. And they would call Karin Afshal Yasme, the Yasme, they would call themselves the Yisomim of the Yisomim. Because they only had 200 bodyguards. Imagine a rabbi even having one bodyguard. Is there any rabbi out there who has a bodyguard? I wonder. We mentioned in the previous daf that people who used to make dayanim, right? Dayanim who serviced the Sibor, they used to take payment from Trumas Alishka. So also the people who checked karbonos, if they had a mum, right? If they had a mum, it can't be brought as a carbon. They also took their payment from the Trumas Alishka, which was basically the fund that was given for the Machzas Shekel, and they used to take some of that money to bring the carbon ola, or in the Shachris or Arvis, Ben Arbayim, Shachris in the afternoon. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, obviously needed people to teach the Hilchach Shrita to the Kohen. They didn't have a Yoredeya, which was printed back then. They didn't have a printing press back then. I know in Skar and Shumas Alishka, they also would get paid from Shumas Alishka. We'll discuss in Ben Sian why you're allowed to get paid from Shumas Alishka and why it was called Shumas Alishka. Amar Rav Gidal Marav, also, they used to do Kmitza by meal offerings, flour offerings. They used to take 3 fingers full, and they used to do kmitza. They had to learn the halachas about that. They would also, for their services, they would take payment from Shumas Alishka. Not only in the Beis Hamikdash, but also in all Yerushalayim, the people that corrected the Sifrei Torah. Sifrei Torah had a mistake. They had to fix a Sefer Torah. How you know in Scharim Shumas Alishka, they were servicing the people of Yerushalayim. They also got paid from Shumas Alishka. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Nashma, Orgos Parochos. Parchos. They were parochas, right? They had coverings of the ark. No the Scharim Shumas Alishka. They would get paid from Shumas Alishka. Ani Omer Mikadji Berek Abayis. Hoel Parochos Tachas Binyan Asuyos. He says himself, Rav Nachman said himself, he quoted Rav. Rav says they got paid from Zalishka. Rav Nachman said himself, they got paid from Kodshei Berek Abayis. Kodshei Berek Abayis is a much holier thing. Kodshei Berek Abayis is basically they sanctify something not as korban, but to be used for the upkeep, the maintenance of the Beis Hamikdash. So that's more holy. So to take parochas, which we use, we'll see in a second what parochas we're talking about. We're not actually talking about this type of parochas before our own. Right? We're talking about something else. That's why he said this. He's really not arguing on Rav. They were in place of actual walls in the second Beis Hamikdash. They didn't build the walls in certain places. He used curtains. Meisive. So the Gemara asks the question: Women, they used to weave the parochas. Beis Garma, we learn Mesachas Yuma, they were in charge of baking the lechem upon him. Beis Avtinas, Al Maisa Akar, Beis Avtinas, a certain family knew how to do the Torah as well. According to the Skarim Mishumas Alishka, they all got paid from the Alishka. So you see, not like Rav Nachman, which is awesome, but the Babi, the Amar, Rav Zara, Amarav, Shosha Sa Parochas, we're talking about when Rav Nachman said they used to get paid for Kadshi Bedek Habayis, that's talking about the ones they use as entrances. Amar Zara, Amarav, Shosha Sa Parochas, he would make the Sheni. The second base of Mikdash, they didn't make walls. Shiva Keneged, Shiva Sha'arim. Right? There are 7 gates. If you go to the old city of Yerushalayim nowadays, there's 7 gates to get into the base of Mikdash, the old city. There's Shar Ashbos is one of them. Shar Yafo is one of them. Shar Shechem, those people are more familiar. The others are really toward East Jerusalem. Shar Arios, etc. The other ones. One was made for the entrance to the Heichal. The Ulam was the antechamber, right, directly outside the Heichal. Beis B'Dvir, Shnayim for the Kodshei HaKodshim, right, 2 to get in. Mesachas Yuma describes why there was 2 curtains. Beis Kinegdan Ba'aliyah, on top of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. There was actually an attic over there, and therefore wherever the 2 curtains were below, there were also 2 curtains above. So that equals 13. That's what Rav Nachman was talking about, because that is part of the maintenance of the Beis HaMikdash. They served, these parochas were not to adorn Aron HaKodesh, they were used for the actual, in place of walls. So therefore it's Bedek Habayis. Women, we learn in Mesachas Sukkah, they used to have certain places where they would give birth, these women, and make sure their children were completely tahor from birth. When they're osek in para aduma and getting the water for the made para, right? I read news there was 5 para adumas that actually made it prior to Rosh Hashanah, to 5 clean para adumas that made it to Israel. They were transported from Texas by an evangelical Christian from Texas. They haven't had even 1 clean para aduma in 2,000 years apparently. Now they have 5 in Eretz Yisrael. They say it's a sign, a harbinger of Mashiach coming. We'll see. It says 8th year, Ben David Ba, right? The 6th year of Shemitah, Kolos, Black Lives Matter, protest, capital riot. Then the 7th year of Shemitah, we had Machamos, Russo-Ukraine war. And the 8th year now, Ben David Ba. Ben David's coming. He's coming. He's on his way. So they would take also, right? They would need to be fed, these families, the women and their children. And so they would also take Shemuz Alish. Abba Shol says, Nashim Yikarosh Yerushalayim, these precious women in Yerushalayim, Zanas Osan, Umafarnas Osan. The wealthy women in Yerushalayim used to feed these mothers and children. They didn't take money from Shalish. But Rav Huna asked Rav who? Just Rav. Please Sharis, top of Kuvam and Beis, Ma'oshi Asim Mikochi Bedek Habayis. Right? What about, they had different kalim, they had, when they made a korban mincha, they had to fry it in a pan, they had frying pans, they had, knives for shchita and things like that, to shech the animals. They had kalim where they accepted the blood in them, it threw the blood on the mizbeach. What money did you use to purchase these kalim? Can you use Kadshi Bedek Habayis? It's called the upkeep of the Beis HaMikdash. Starting with Mizbeach and Kadshi Bedek Habayis, it's considered part of servicing the Mizbeach. The Mizbeach is certainly part of the structure of the Beis HaMikdash. Mizbeach Asu also, and they come from that. Also, a Karban Ninu, maybe they're actually, the kalim are really for the animal itself, which was Alishka you osin, and they weren't fit to be, not called the upkeep of the Beis HaMikdash. The Karbanos were brought on the Mizbeach, but you can't call them part of the maintenance of the actual physical structure of the Beis HaMikdash. Amrle Enas and Elam Mishum Alishka, you answer them, they're only comes from Alishka, you can't use Kodshei Bedek Habayis from Eziveh. He asked a question from a Brisa, V'chalosa meviu l'fnei HaMelech, v'yoyada shara kesef v'yaseu kelim v'yis Hashem kli sharis. It's pasuk seemingly, pasuk in Divrei Hayam. They brought certain things in front of Yoyada, and the remainder of money, right? Seemingly, this remainder of money is money that was donated for Kodshei Bedek Habayis. The remainder was used to make kalim. So you see, you could use Kodshei Bedek Habayis. Amalei da'akrayach ksuvei la'akrayach nevi'eh. The one who taught you ksuvim, which is Divrei Hayamim, didn't teach you nevi'im, the earlier prophecies. What does it say in nevi'im? It says in Beis, where is this Beis? There's a pasuk in Malachim. Achal Yaseh Beis Hashem Tzafos. Kila Ose Amlacha Yidnu, right? They wouldn't use it for Safot, certain Kalim in the Beis Hamikdash. Kila Ose Amlacha Yidnu. Here, the article says they were not made for Hashem instruments, and they added the pasuk leaves out words, the Gemara leaves out words, or any vessels of gold or silver from the money that was brought to the house of Hashem, for he gave it to the workmen. The money that was brought to Hashem wasn't made into golden and silver kalim, utensils, it was given to the people that worked. So it seems from the pasuk they wouldn't use the money for kacheh bedek abayis to purchase or to fashion these kalim. Ihachi, so the Gemara says, obviously, so if that's true, kasha kraya adade, we have a seer in the psukim. Divra Yom, it seems they would use kacheh bedek abayis, moment that was hektish for making the kalim in the base of Milish. Pasuk in Malachim says, not lokash, kancha gavul hasiru, kancha gavul lo hasiru. If they collected money for kacheh bedek abayis, they had extra money. That extra money could be used for the kalim. If they didn't have extra money, that's the pasuk in Malachim that they wouldn't use it. So the Gemara asks immediately, because they collected money of kacheh bedek abayis and they had extra, my heavy, who cares? It was already hektish. Once you're mocked to the bedek abayis and you can't use it. Technically, the rabbi said you can't use it for kalim. What does it matter if it's left over? Amar Rabbi Abba Leim based in Masna Aleim. The time they were mocked this shit, based in sort of, it's like kinds of hefker based in hefker, except we're talking about kacheh bedek abayis. They sort of made it al t'nai. There was a t'nai when they gave it. If they're needed, then they're hektish. If not, then they'll be used to fashion the kalim, and they won't be considered kacheh bedek abayis. They'll be other money, shumas halishka money. Tana the Beir Yishmael kli sharis boyin mishumos halishka. Tana Beir Yishmael, the academy of Yishmael said they come to halishka. Shenemar shara kesef ezu kesef sheishal shirayim. This pasuk we quoted before, as shara kesef, even this pasuk seemingly prove that you could use it from hektish. The Gemara reinterprets the pasuk as shara kesef, the remainder of the money. What's the type of money that has extra money? Is that Shumas HaLishka? They donate a lot of Matzah Shekel Mol Klal Yisrael. When they would take from the Korban Ola, they would take a truma, they would raise a portion of it and bring it. So there would be money that they took and money that was remaining. So Shara Kesef must be Shumas HaLishka. So the Gemara says, if you can say it's Shumas HaLishka, so maybe it's not what they took, but actual money that was left over. You're going to see that, whatever you took, whatever you needed, and any machna shekel was left over, maybe only that could be used for the kalim. So the Gemara says, ha'ola, ola rishona, when it comes to korban ola, which is also taken from Shumas HaLishka, it says ha'ola, the ola is the first one, meaning it's from the truma, what you took out from the Shumas HaLishka. Achanami ha'kesef, an extra kesef rishon, the first money, not what's left over, the first money is used for the kalim. Esivei, brisa, which seemingly contradicts this. The Ktoris, paying for the Ktoris, the Karbonos were definitely not part of the bedek abayis. And all the Karbonos come from Shuvas HaLishka. Mizbeach Hazav, Ulevonu, Klishar, is buying Moser and Sachem. Any money that you need for the upkeep of the Mizbeach, the golden altar. Levona was, you put on the Lechem HaPanim, the frankincense, you put on Lechem HaPanim. Klisharis, the kalim, buying Moser and Sachem, would actually come from leftover nesachim, libations, wine which was donated in the mizbeach. You had leftover wine. Someone donated too much wine, so they actually come from hektish, Mizbeach ha'ola alishkos ha'azara is buying mikashe bedek abayis. The upkeep of the outside mizbeach adama, outside of the heichal, alishkos ve'azaros, the chambers, and the azaros, the side rooms, which are all part of the upkeep of the base of Mikdash, they come from kacheh bedek abayis. Chutz l'chomas ha'azara, except for the wall of the Azara, by Mishari Alishkos, that comes from the Truma, or from the remainder of money in the Truma's Halishka. After you took off the Truma from Achsa Shekel, you had money left over, that comes from Shari Halishkos. Because Chomas Azara was not good, that was the edge of the Azara that was cut off, that separated between the base of Mikdash and outside the base of Mikdash, and there's a machlokas whether that was considered part of the base of Mikdash or not. This price assumes it was considered part of Yushalayim, not part of the base of Mikdash, so you can't use kacheh bedek abayis for that. Zui shaninu chomos ha'yer migdal seha, the wall of the city of Yushalayim, migdal seha, its tower, chol sarach yer ba'am mishari alishka, they'd come from the lowest of the low, only the leftover money in Trumas Alishka. Tanahi, So this price that we just aforementioned price seems to indicate it comes from Moser Nesachim, which is hektish. So the Gemara says it's actually Machlos Tanaim. This non really in a Mishnah Moser Truma Maya Osenba, right? They took out money from Zalishka, the Machzah Shekel. They had leftover money. What did they do with it? Ba Rikue Zav Sipur the base Kachia Kachim. They used to plate the outside of Kachia Kachim with gold, right, to make it look nice. Shmuel Omer Mosar Payros the case Mizbeach. The extra money for Payros. We'll see in a second what this is. Right, used for case Mizbeach. Mizbeach is the dessert of the Mizbeach. When they didn't have anything burning on the Mizbeach, they didn't want to leave it barren. They didn't want to leave it without any karbanos. So if they had a spare moment where there were no karbanos being offered, they would burn these karbanos from the extra money. Most are truma klei sharis. The extra money for the truma from the truma alishka goes to klei sharis. Rakiva Omer. Most are truma l'keis mizbeach. Most are truma would go for case mizbeach, for the dessert from mizbeach. Most are nesachim l'klei sharis. Rabbi Kiva is that opinion, who says that actually hektish, the libations that was donated as hektish, they can use for klei sharis. Rechina Gana Ganim Omer. Most are nesachim l'keis mizbeach. The extra nesachim would be used for extra karbanos. Most are truma l'klei sharis. The extra truma alishka would be used for klishar. Zeza lo hayu modim peiros. Both the latter two opinions, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Chanina ben Askan Kohanim, they argued on one of the first opinions that says about this concept of Mosar peiros. They argued there was no concept of Mosar peiros. We'll see in a second what the Maklokas is. Peiros mahi. So what is this discussion of peiros? Asanya Mosar truma mayos and ba. What do you do extra truma? Lokin peiros bezol. There is an opinion, right? The first two Tanaim in the previous price held that you would buy peiros, fruits, bizol. You do business with it, extra money, put it in the stock market. You buy peiros, the actual fruit side of it. They didn't have stock market back then. They had apples and oranges. They buy it cheap and they'd sell it at a higher price. The profits they would make, they use for case mizbeach. That's where we learn most are peiros case mizbeach. The previous price, the extra money from the peiros, the profits you made by selling the fruits. So used for case mizbeach. What does it mean? Latter two opinions didn't agree with the peiros. This non most are shayri lishka ma yosimba. What they do extra money in the trumas halishka. They would buy wines and oils and flowers, and they would sell it at a higher price, like we said before. You don't do business with money of hektish. You also don't do money with money that was connected to be given out as tzedakah for poor people. B'shal hektish my time. Why wouldn't you do business with hektish my time alone? In aniyas makom ashiras, right? Basically, is supposed to be the ultimate representation of wealth, right? God's palace, wealth. If you're doing business with it, that's a little poverty. You need the money. If you need the money, that means you're a little bit poor. So you shouldn't do business with money of hektish. B'shal aniyah my time alone. Why should you do money with funds of tzedakah? Dilma misram ilhu aniyah v'leikal misvalei. Because maybe if you're already doing business with them, so it's not available the money right now to give to them. Maybe an ani will come and he'll need money, and you won't have the money to give him because it's invested in the stock market or somewhere else. It's not available. It's not liquid. So therefore, they didn't do business with the tzedakah, the kupa of tzedakah, what was set aside for the aniyim. That'll be a conclusion of today's shir. Stay tuned for an important iyot ben Sion, in my opinion. Discussing more this trumas halishka. Was it hektish? Was it not hektish? It was used for karbanos, not used for karbanos. Could it be used for kli shares? Exclusively for kli shares, or could you even use kachri bet kabayis for kli shares? The Gemara discusses all these things. I'll explain it more in iyot ben Sion coming up next.